The Valari civilization, spanning hundreds of systems across the Orion sector, was ancient, meticulous, and suffocatingly structured. Their ships ran on protocol, their societies on ritual, and their minds on the certainty that the universe followed understandable rules. Stories of the Terrans, the humans, existed only in shadowed archives, told in the same breath as myths of star-devouring beasts and time anomalies. To speak of them seriously was to invite ridicule or suspicion. Kael'thera was one of the youngest radar analysts aboard the Valari patrol vessel Virex. Her status as a third-generation analyst meant she had inherited the role with all its expectations but none of its passion. She did her duty, yes, but she questioned everything. Her elders warned her curiosity was dangerous, but she didn't care. She had read every declassified fragment on the Terrans, every recorded distortion in dark space, every lost transmission that hinted at unnatural intelligence. To her, the humans weren't a myth. They were a mystery not yet solved. Her assignment was uneventful as usual. Virex patrolled Sector J-19, a neglected, lifeless slice of interstellar space known for its silence. The command team joked that the only thing they would ever find out here was space dust and an occasional rogue comet. Yet, Kael'thera scanned meticulously. And then, on the 173rd rotation of the cycle, something changed. A signal blinked into existence. It lasted only 0.2 seconds, almost within margin of error. But Kael'thera caught it. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. No known signature, no recognizable modulation pattern. The waveform was erratic, as if resisting classification. She requested a full-spectrum scan. Her superior dismissed it. Her persistence earned her a formal reprimand and a note in her service log. But she archived the data fragment anyway. In her quarters at night, she dissected the signal. Every algorithm she applied failed. The closest match came from a restricted archive she wasn't supposed to access. A Terran war code fragment, unconfirmed, unverified, and untranslatable. But it had the same rhythm, the same pulse. The next day, she redirected one of the secondary antenna arrays by creating a false calibration loop. It gave her a full 12 minutes of deep scan time. What she found wasn't just a signal. It was a pattern of microbursts moving at faster-than-light intervals in seemingly impossible trajectories. They formed a shape, a shadow on her scope. And then it resolved into structure. A ship, angular, massive, silent, no emissions, no thermal bloom, just presence, watching. Her breath caught. She tagged it, labeled it as Anomaly 17, and filed a shadow report to her backup archive in case her logs were wiped. Then she stared. It didn't make sense. A vessel of that mass should display subspace signatures for light years. This one sat like a ghost, not bending the void but merging with it. The dimensions didn't align with known physics. The edges weren't just sharp. They were variable, shifting subtly between scans. She called her superior again. He laughed. Anomaly fatigue, he said. Do some stasis meditation. But in her gut, she knew this was not a glitch. It was a footprint, a Terran footprint. The myth said humans were artists of war and science in equal measure, that they vanished after rewriting what reality meant, that they left behind only silence, not corpses, that they would return when the stars forgot them. She couldn't stop staring at the outline. No energy fields, no motion, and yet it shifted, not through propulsion, but intent. The object changed position without showing acceleration. It was now 0.4 light seconds closer. Still silent, still dark, still watching. Her terminal flickered, briefly displaying a string of old characters before rebooting. The phrase was Valari script, archaic. Translation, we see you. Her heart hammered. She sent a silent alert to auxiliary systems. She masked it as a maintenance ping. Then she downloaded the last 30 seconds of data to a portable core and sealed it inside her personal locker. She knew the ship's command would suppress or destroy this. The next day, the Virex adjusted course away from the anomaly. The captain gave a vague order citing gravitational fluctuations. No one challenged him, except Kael'thera. She filed a formal request for reassessment. It was denied with prejudice. She sent an anonymous report to the High Archive. It disappeared within hours. Then her access codes to Level 3 scans were revoked. So she hacked in. Valari systems weren't built for defense against internal threats. They didn't believe their own people could be the problem. Kael'thera exploited that arrogance. She rerouted a NAV drone with her own subroutines and launched it into the anomaly's vicinity. It carried a passive sensor suite. If anything emitted, echoed, or even flickered, the drone would see it. The drone didn't send a signal back. It just vanished. One moment on her console, the next not. No explosion, no debris, no subspace turbulence. Gone, like it had been erased from existence. And then her console turned black, just for a second, then white. Then a single message appeared. You were warned. She disconnected it instantly. Her hands trembled, her breathing shallow. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of being noticed by something she couldn't understand, something that could break the rules of physics without effort. The captain summoned her. Her unauthorized scan had been detected. The punishment was to be reassignment to surface duty on a low-tier planet. Career over. Name erased from records. She nodded silent and accepted the judgment. That night, her terminal activated on its own. No signal, no authorization, just a pulsing symbol. Not Valari, not any known language, just a shape, a cube with a moving core, three-dimensional but somehow deeper than space itself. It rotated slowly, then stopped. A voice, artificial and calm, spoke an old Galactic cant. Observation is permitted, interference is not. You have been marked. Kael'thera saved none of it. She recorded nothing. She told no one. But she knew the ship hadn't left. It had merely let itself be seen. And her sight had been the test. She failed it or passed it. She didn't know. A day later, while in transit to her reassignment post, she looked out the viewing bay. The stars shimmered normally. But then her vision blurred for half a second. A black silhouette moved across her sight, just outside the transport. It didn't move like a vessel. It didn't move like anything. She whispered the words she now believed, not as myth, not as legend, but as certainty. Human. Then the stars returned to normal, and the galaxy held its breath. The journey to Aros 7 was intended to be uneventful. Kael'thera, stripped of her title and clearance, sat in isolation. The transport ship carried only low-priority personnel, cast-offs and those deemed harmless. The irony was lost on no one. She, the only one who had glimpsed the Terran truth, was being exiled to a farming world. As the vessel coasted along its assigned trajectory, anomalies began to surface in the NAV system. Not enough to cause concern, just enough to confuse the onboard AI. The ship would realign its heading every few minutes by 0.001 degrees, always toward the same direction. Empty space. No alerts were raised. The AI adjusted without question. Kael'thera noticed. Her mind remained sharp. She pulled a silent data trace from the secondary logs, cross-referenced against stellar charts, and found the anomaly. The ship was subtly being guided, nudged, towards Sector B13. No known planets. No traffic. Officially unremarkable. She confronted the pilot, a middle-tier Valari named Dresk. He dismissed her concerns, citing redundant navigation checks and system integrity verifications. But his eyes were uncertain. He had noticed, too, 4 days before their scheduled arrival, all communication arrays failed simultaneously. No outgoing or incoming signals. Standard procedure was to reverse course. The pilot tried. The engines did not respond. The AI offered a cryptic analysis. Navigation priority altered by encoded prime directive. Source unknown. Dresk initiated a full reboot. Nothing changed. Kael'thera sat in silence, observing. This was not malfunction. This was redirection. The stars outside shifted as they dropped from standard velocity into an unplanned drift. No motion alarms. No resistance. The ship simply coasted toward an area that did not exist on any maps. Then space changed. No visual anomaly. Just absence. A stretch of black that defied sensor feedback. LiDAR pinged off nothing. Thermal readings dropped into negative absolutes. No sound, no distortion, just a cold, silent void. And in the center, the same outline she had seen days before on the Virex. The ship, the Terran construct. But it was closer now, and larger. So large it defied perception. It did not reflect light. It did not emit heat. It simply was. Geometry failed around its edges. The ship appeared both flat and infinite. Dresk fell silent, staring at it. The AI shut down entirely. Emergency protocols failed. Kael'thera stood, understanding. This was not abduction. This was invitation. The transport docked without motion. One moment they were near it, the next inside it. No transition, no sensation, just difference. Interior scans failed. There were no readings, just metallic surfaces that were not metal, walls that absorbed light, air that didn't register. They stepped out by instinct more than instruction. Kael'thera noticed something strange. Gravity was subjective. Her body responded, as if planetary pull adjusted to her biology. Dress experienced something different. He moved too fast, stumbled, disoriented. He whispered, "I feel like I'm falling sideways." They heard nothing, saw no movement, but there was presence, watching, listening, measuring. Then the voice came, not through ears, through thought. "You perceive myth. We are function. You sought truth. We verify." Dress collapsed. He twitched, convulsed, then stilled. His body faded, not dematerialized, but erased, like he had been an error corrected. Kael'thera remained calm. Her fear had passed. What replaced it was resolve. She answered, not aloud, but in focused intent. "I seek understanding." The presence responded. "Understanding is not required. Observation is tolerated." She asked and thought, "Why now?" A pause. Then, probability threshold exceeded. Galactic entropy nearing critical. Terran reactivation permitted. She processed this. Reactivation. Meaning they had never truly left. Only waited. Then the environment shifted. The structure bent, but not physically. Her mind saw memories. Entire civilizations collapsing in silence. Not war. Not plague. Just negation. Every scene ended with the same shape looming over a star, over a city, over a world. She saw Valari ships vaporize mid-sentence. She saw time loop snap. She saw anomalies swallowed like breath. The Terrans had been here before. Often, she whispered mentally, "Why us? Why now?" You inquired. That suffices. The black walls brightened, not with light, but with meaning. Equations in impossible languages. Visions of universes folded like cloth. Realities terminated because they were inefficient. Simulations run across entire galaxies. Then a singular image, Earth. Soul 3, abandoned, but not lifeless, just locked. Humanity ceased interaction, awaited alignment. Your intrusion triggered evaluation. Kael'thera realized the myths were the warning signs, not of monsters, but of caretakers. They didn't conquer. They edited. Are you going to destroy us? You are not significant. Your course is self-determined. We observe outcomes. You altered vector. That is noteworthy. She breathed. What do you want from me? Relay. A beam of energy entered her mind. No pain, just information. A history not in time, but in decisions. How the Terrans chose to disappear rather than dominate. How their final act was to encode themselves into the deep layers of physics itself. Not AI, not consciousness, a conditional presence. Then it ended. She was back on the transport. Alone. Dress gone. Systems restored. Navigation returned. Destination. RO7. No one questioned her late arrival. No one asked about the missing pilot. The report she filed was classified instantly, then deleted. Her clearance remained revoked. Her name remained erased. But now she understood. The Terrans didn't leave signs because they didn't want to be followed. They left myths because they wanted to be remembered by fear, not form. Their silence was louder than war. Kael'thera began writing in private. not in reports, but in stories. She embedded truths in fiction, hinted at shapes, described patterns, whispered about shadows that made physics flinch. Others began to notice, quietly, a growing circle. Scientists, philosophers, pattern readers, not believers, but listeners. And one day, as she read an encoded fragment aloud in a secure room, a line of text appeared on her console without network connection. You are heard. No signature, no trace, just certainty. The myth was real. The humans had returned, and they were listening. Aro's 7 was silent. Kale Thera worked in the Agritech archives by day and decoded the universe by night. Her daily duties were mundane: soil nutrient mapping, irrigation efficiency reports, crop yield projections, all irrelevant to her deeper purpose. The Terrans had not spoken again, but they did not need to. What she carried now was not a message. It was a contagion, a conceptual one, the seed of knowing, and it was spreading. Scientists started noticing anomalies in deep space signals, repeating sequences in background radiation. A researcher on Erden, 5 discovered geometric constants shifting subtly across gravitational studies. Another on LSR station died of cognitive collapse after decoding a waveform buried in pulsar emissions, a waveform Kale Thera had seen before. Her followers grew, not through recruitment but through recognition. They had seen the same darkness in their dreams, the same ship, the same voice. They called themselves witnesses. Governments ignored them, then feared them, then silenced them. But by then, the myth had rooted too deep. Across a dozen sectors, independent research groups went dark. Fleets sent to investigate disappeared without transmission. Kale Thera was summoned, not as a prisoner this time, but as an anomaly. A council of species convened, the Galactic Concord, to interrogate the spread of the so-called human signal. She was brought in under pretense of consultation. They asked her, "What is the signal?" She answered, "Proof." They asked her of what? She replied, "That something greater is watching." When they pressed further, she refused, not from defiance, but understanding. This wasn't information that could be explained. It could only be experienced, like standing on the edge of an event horizon and understanding, not through math, but intuition, that time had ended. They dismissed her, labeled her a philosopher corrupted by isolation. Her name re-entered the censored registries. Her past was erased again. But the witnesses remembered. They started building. Not ships, not weapons, structures, monoliths of unknown material, shaped after the human ship seen in dreams. Each iteration closer than the last. Each constructed without blueprints, as if the builders had downloaded the designs through instinct. And the moment the 7th monolith was completed, something answered, not in words, not in force, in changes. Stars began to shift positions by measurable fractions. Dark energy pulses began to appear in synchronized bursts across dead sectors. Black holes began emitting pattern radiation. And on RO7, Kale Thera heard the voice again. Initiation complete. Step 2, integration. She fell to floor, screaming without sound. Images flooded her mind. Terran logic, impossible structures, entire civilizations formed and collapsed in seconds. Realities shaped like fluid dynamics. Entropy reversed. Mass converted directly into concept. She woke in the witness stronghold. The room was silent. Dozens of others sat in trance. She wasn't alone. Each had heard the next message. Each was being integrated, not biologically. Conceptually, their minds were being rewritten into formats capable of Terran communication. Outside, the Concord fell into chaos. Fleets refused orders. Planets seceded. A quiet civil fracture spread across the galaxy, one not of politics, but a belief. Not in gods, in ghosts, in ancient beings who had rewritten physics and then vanished. Some species embraced it. The Kolari sent emissaries to the witnesses. The Drak constructed a listening array that recorded a full minute of Terran signal before imploding under paradox. The Zuran homeworld went silent, and a week later, their sun pulsed in a binary rhythm, coordinates. Those who resisted began to disappear. Not in war. In removal. Colonies found empty. Ships discovered adrift, intact but lifeless. Entire data archives scrubbed clean not by force, but by precision. The witnesses moved silently through it all. Their only mission, prepare. Kale Thera received the final message as she stood before the monolith. You have succeeded. Correction begins. She asked, what are we correcting? The lie of isolation. Across the galaxy, a quiet cascade began. Planets began to glow from within, not from reactors, but from memory. Places the Terrans had been, or had created. Artificial moons began to hum. Relics long thought dead began to power on. A station orbiting the ruined world of Theskar activated and transmitted a name no one remembered, but everyone understood. Earth. The myth was no longer myth. The Terrans were not gone. They were hidden in the code of reality, awaiting a vector change, awaiting minds capable of perceiving them. Kale Thera now stood at the edge of that threshold. She looked into the monolith as it opened. Within was not a ship. It was understanding, a framework for existence that redefined everything. She stepped through. She emerged on a world she had never seen, but knew instantly. Sol 3. Human architecture stood in impossible preservation. Cities with no decay. Oceans without pollution. Skies that shimmered with data. No people, but not abandoned. The voice returned. You are welcome. And with it, others arrived. Witnesses from across the stars, each stepping into Earth as if returning home. Not conquered, not invaded, inherited. Kale Thera understood now. The Terrans had not left the galaxy. They had embedded themselves within it, waiting for someone to ask the right question, to take the right path, to notice the ship on radar and believe the myth was real, because it was. And now, the caretakers of entropy had returned, not to rule, but to rewrite. Reality itself bent gently, as if exhaling. And for the first time in thousands of years, Earth dreamed again. The myth was complete. The cycle had closed. And Kale Thera, once silenced, was now part of the greatest truth the galaxy had ever feared to remember. The humans were still here, and they were watching, and the universe would never be the same again.